Hey, Buck.
Hey man, what's up, Steve?
Good to see you, man.
You too, my friend.
I know you just mentioned to me before we started recording you're in California. You just got back today or last night.
Yeah, to Nashville. Yeah, I was there. Sorry, let me turn off this app here. Um, yeah, I was there for in LA for a week. We rehearsing. We did a Janie's Fund, Steven Tyler's Janie's Fund event in San Francisco.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
yeah, the night before last, and so I flew in yesterday and got in late, but it was amazing. I got to play with Robin Zander from Cheap Trick. We did a few of Cheap Trick songs, and Chris Robinson from the Black Crowes. We did a few of those, and Joe and Steven from Aerosmith were there, of course, and so we did the rest were Aerosmith songs. So I don't know. I mean, I feel like I'm the luckiest guy on the planet to get to work with legends. So it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, you got a great story, man. I can't wait to get into it with you. I wanted to go all the way back for a second though, because I knew you grew up in Alabama, and our friend John Bionelli told me
Yeah.
that your mother and father were in a popular gospel group, and they brought you into it at a young age. Can you talk about what that was like growing up in Alabama near Birmingham, right?
Yeah, outside of Birmingham in the sticks in a place called Shady Grove. And I do think there's something in the water there between the corridor between Central Alabama, Birmingham, up through Muscle Shoals, through up
Yeah.
to Tupelo to Memphis. It's the gospel music. It's the roots music. And I grew up singing Southern gospel music with my mom and dad. They had a gospel quartet called the Johnson Brothers Quartet. My mom played piano. Um, you know, Southern gospel music is definitely it was a quartet music. That's what Elvis wanted to be. They had the pompadour hair and the matching suits, and it was really closely related to like bluegrass because all the harmonies and but there was always a piano player. Anyway, I Mama says I was singing before I was walking, so I credit them. Mom played every day, so from the time I was in the womb, she was playing every day. So I think that probably had something to do with it. And then, they were singing every day in through the house, just it was just part of the life. And I didn't think anything special or different about it. Of course, I do now. Um, but they just brought me into it, and by the time I was 5 years old, I was performing with them, and I just had a strong voice and could sing in tune, and so it's just always been a part of my life. I'm the only one in the family that made a career out of it. I mean, they had a career going. They did a couple of albums, and they were, we traveled throughout the South, and but it was more of a um, I don't know. They still had regular jobs. My dad worked at U.S.
Right.
Steel, you know, and so at some point it just probably became too much, but we still sang at church. Mom still plays every Sunday, So, um, it's something like in the music business. I don't think there's any such thing as retirement. What else you gonna do? Sit at home and play by yourself. Come on. You gotta play in front of people.
Yeah, you're around a lot of guys like that, so you should
Yeah,
know.
exactly.
So when you grew up in a situation like that and gospel's big in your family, is it hard to get into other kinds of music too, or are they open to that?
Well, in my house, it was all gospel, and classical. Mom would listen to the easy listening radio station, which was, Frank Sinatra and Johnny Mathis. That was her break from it and driving in the car. And, Dad would dabble a little bit of country, or he liked, the old stuff, Jerry Lee and stuff like that. But he was really passionate about gospel music. He loved harmonies and stuff. So, I had older cousins by the time I was around, I don't know, 11 or 12 that, hey, you need to know what this is and loan me their vinyl. Like, this is the Beatles. This is the Rolling Stones. This is the Who. This is Led Zeppelin. And, um, and I took to it, man, like water. I in my bedroom, I had a little crappy little vinyl turntable and put the headphones on because I didn't want anyone else to know what I was listening to. And it was like a whole nother world. Like all of a sudden we're in Technicolor, like, wow, what's this, and those English bands that were influenced by the very thing I grew up singing, I certainly identified with. It was just so
Yeah.
different, though. I mean, these guitars and these vocals, and like, you can do that? Wow. I mean, that's amazing, and certainly Aerosmith fell right into that, being influenced by, blues rock, the Yardbirds and stuff like that. So, um, and man, the melodies that Stephen had, but also this voice, the scream that he could do, and these notes. I'm like, man, that's just, we just grew up in the church. We always would sing and match harmonies, match phrasings and articulations and blend without thinking about it. It's just something you did, and that's the amazing thing about bluegrass and gospel music in the South is that oh, so and so's not here to sing that part. We'll switch up parts and no big deal. We could just do
Yeah.
it. And I find today, as a songwriter producer, the young artists I work with, I find a good bit of them don't know how to do harmonies, which I find amazing and unfortunate, And I think harmonies, singing, the instrument that comes from within, that is shared with others. When you're singing together in harmony, I don't know if there's anything, if you don't know, if you've never experienced that, I'm sorry for you, because there's nothing more beautiful, and just it's like, I don't know, it's the universe connecting us all in that moment. And so the first time I met Steven Tyler, it was in Istanbul, and the first time we sang together, um, he felt it. I know he did because he said it, and I did too. It's like he knew that I instinctively, I've been doing it all my life, knew how to go where he is,
Yeah.
his phrasing, and sing with him, become one voice, And anyway, so I've just been blessed to always have a career to, look, I mean, when I did land the Aerosmith job in 2014, I had many reach out to me that said, "Oh man, congrats, you finally made it." I'm like, "No, I made it years ago." I mean, I've always worked. I've worked with a lot of amazing artists before Aerosmith, but I made it because I got to choose what I wanted to do with my life and a profession and have a career at it. And most people on this planet are not afford that luxury, and it's not something, a line of work that I recommend, because if you're out to make money, become famous, do something else, because the chances of that happening are not going to happen. It's just, it's a calling. Music chooses you.
Right. I know you moved to LA from Alabama, but before that, I was wondering, when did you actually start playing keyboards? And was that the first thing you started doing, or were there other instruments?
Well, again, my first instrument was the
The
voice,
voice, yes.
singing. Because my mom played, there was, I don't know, about three pianos in the house.
Wow.
And she'd have the nice one in the living room, and then there would be one in like a rehearsal, like den, whatever. And then there was an old beat up one in the other side of the basement, the unfinished side without the paneling. My dad would keep his tools and stuff, and I would go in that one and piddle, because I felt like no one could hear me, although they probably really could. But she had me started taking lessons, and I hated it. I didn't, that I was never disciplined, self-disciplined about practicing like I should. Um, and but then my sister started taking and started getting pretty good. And I think that's that jealousy of, hey, she's playing that song. I want to do that too. So I would start picking out songs that I heard on the radio, um, that I liked, and the good thing about, I felt like I was lucky enough to grow up to radio in the 70s when I was in junior high, because radio was so much more diverse, and you would hear an Aerosmith song and then a Barry Manilow song and then
Yeah.
an Elton John song and then a Queen song. It was Michael Jackson, and then it was just all over the board, and they were all great songs. Um, so I would like, whether it was Elton John or Stevie Wonder or, and then I would dive into older stuff, Ray Charles, certainly Little Richard, Jerry Lee. I could do that. That was easy.
Was it always about the songs for you, or were there
Yeah.
artists that you like wanted their records?
Um, a bit of both, but I think that because of radio in the 70s, it was songs first.
Hmm.
Um, I was never one to like just become so passionate about one or two artists. Like there are people that, man, they are all about the Beatles and nothing else, or whatever. And that's fine. I'm not criticizing that. That was never me. I like so many things, you know, um, and it was all intriguing to me. Um, I love the Who, because first time I put Who's Next on, I heard that Bob O'Reilly sequencer synthesizer, and I'm like, that's like from another planet. And then you hear Daltrey scream, and you're like, oh my God, you can do that? And I'm like, and then Behind Blue Eyes would come on in these beautiful harmonies, and then that's something I certainly identified with, and that's like, okay, I'm in 100%, right? Um, and there's such a wealth of music out there that I still don't know, that how did I miss that? And I'm envious of young people today. It's like, man, you got so much great music to listen to that I've heard so much that you're going to hear it for the first time. And what a treasure.
Yeah.
Um, but I listened to certainly the Beatles and the Stones. I liked them both. I didn't like one better than the other. There were different reasons why I liked them both. Um, and from there, and certainly the stuff that is, whether it's from Stax or Muscle Shoals, because that was closer to home, and it's all blues derived, starts there, and certainly, like the heart, edgier stuff for me at the time, a kid from Alabama, Led Zeppelin certainly was that, but still it fit in because the blues, and uh, it just was so intriguing, how they took American music because way they were brought up in the 50s, um, and made it their own, and changed it and progressed. And that's what the thing about music is that it's always evolving, and we don't know where it's going to, what the next thing. I think the business is certainly it's evolved, but not the best way.
Oh, I agree. I've been in it my whole life. I don't
Yeah,
like,
no, the business is not good.
yeah,
But music is always evolving, whether we know. The only thing is that we just don't know about it as much
yeah,
because, there's what 100,000 songs a day released,
that's crazy.
and that's probably a conservative figure. And
Yeah.
so it's hard to poke through the white noise of everything. There's probably the amazing artists that we just don't know about them because either they are not the influencer on social media or they don't have the budget to really, and it really comes down to those two things right now. And so what can I say? The labels back in the day, even though people would say, oh, they ripped off the artist. Well, they served a purpose. They were the gatekeepers. They vetted these art. It took a lot to a band to be able to go into a recording studio. You had to prove yourself because recording studios were expensive. 2-inch tape was expensive, and now everybody has a studio in their bedroom.
Yeah,
So
I know. It's crazy, isn't it? Yeah, um when you were going through this musical thing as a youth, when did you decide that you needed to move to California? And it must have been a big move from you because it sounds like you have a close family you came from.
well, I met my wife in college at Birmingham Southern College, and I went to college only because my mom had a job there. She was smart enough to get a job. She managed the bookstore, and at the time, you employees of the school, their children would have free tuition.
Hmm.
So I was going to go to Nashville or I was going to do something. I had a band already in Birmingham and, you know, do the clubs. But I promised my mom, yeah, I'll give it a shot. And I liked it. I found players in at Birmingham Southern and started a band in college and played all the frats and sororities, and the clubs. But I met my wife. She was a musical theater major, and so she wanted to pursue acting after college. So 1990, we moved to LA, and I was a fish out of water, of course. Um, and not in the way that it was it wasn't like, I mean, my parents are very open-minded people, and I appreciate that and love that about them. Um, Very non-judgmental. My dad was an amazing man in that regard. Everybody loved my dad. Um, but I think when you move to LA, the world lives on your block, and so you have all kinds of people from all different countries, different cultures, and it was just like, okay, this is different, and I didn't know where I fit in. It was at the time, I think the big like hair metal bands were still happening on Sunset Strip, and I certainly wasn't that. I was probably more about the Black Crowes because they were a
Hmm.
rock band from Georgia, and that was like, okay, that's it. I wanted to be Paul Rogers, I love that soulful rock voice, and that was kind of my thing, those guys, whether it was Lou Graham or Steven Tyler, you know, uh, uh, Rod Stewart, those kind of singers.
I love
That's
all those guys. Where,
yeah,
where, where did you live when you first got to LA?
in the Valley, in Sherman Oaks,
We were
and
probably neighbors. I was just
yeah,
thinking around 1990, I was living at Coldwater and Moore Park on
I
Coldwater
know
and Moore
exactly
Park.
what it is. We're at Magnolia and Van Nuys.
We
Yeah,
sat next to each other in
yeah,
Jerry's Deli, probably.
yeah. I love Jerry's
I,
Deli.
w I was at Metal Blade Records around that time, and they
Yeah,
had an
yeah,
office
man.
right on Ventura Boulevard. So,
Crazy. Well, LA wasn't my first choice. It was a little too a far away destination, but my wife wanted to pursue acting, so I wasn't gonna let the love of my life go there by herself. So yeah, let's give it a shot, and how, we were there, and I was saying yes to every gig I could grab and waiting tables and doing all kinds of day jobs, being a courier. I sold stun guns to truck stops. Uh, I mean,
you,
all kind of crazy jobs. It's just like, everyone has to pay their dues one way or the other,
yeah,
right?
it seems to me that you probably had a lot of perseverance because the Carlos Santana thing didn't come until 2005, and you said you moved out there till in 1990.
Well,
What were you
there was always things happening,
what were
I
you
mean,
doing for all those years?
well,
Like, were
I
you
was
pl
saying I was gigging, I mean, I had a band. I mean, I worked with some artists. The first artist I worked with was this guy from Baltimore, good friend, Michael Klein. And there was
Michael Klein?
Klein, Kline. You wouldn't know him. I mean,
Oh,
he
wait a second. I do know a Michael Klein from
oh
that
really?
era. I was working at Third Stone Music after I left uh, Metal Blade, and Michael Klein was someone I almost signed to a publishing deal. Is it
No
the same
way.
guy? It's like a
What?
tall guy with like long, like dirty blonde hair, kind of, I think.
It's reddish hair.
Yeah, this is the
Reddish hair.
same guy.
Oh my
It
gosh.
was Michael
That's
Klein and the somethings, but I
the
can't.
Gypsies.
Oh my God, that is crazy.
Oh. Well, all right, there you go.
We're
So
all
it's
connected,
we
man.
all
Michael
when you
Klein is a
all
really good songwriter too. I remember him.
he really is. And so there was a thing called Musicians Contact Service. It was in a little mini mall off of Sunset Boulevard, and you would go there and you would drop off a cassette and an 8x10 and a resume. And so I was a singer looking for a band, and it'd list what other skill sets can you do. I'm like, well, I can play keys, I can play acoustic guitar, I write songs. And so bands looking for, and I was looking to get the most opportunities I can get. So I would say, yeah, I'm a singer looking for a band, or I'm a keyboardist, you know, and um, and so I would go to find. So I found a few bands that I auditioned for. None of them worked out, but through one of them, I met a good friend, Ty Stevens, who we're still friends to this day. He was a guitar player. That band never didn't work out that he was in, but he and I became friends, started writing songs, and he was successful with a publishing deal and played with a lot of big artists. And Michael Klein was one that called me. He said, "Hey, you play keys?" I'm like, "Yeah." And he says, "Well, I have an investor. I pay $75 a gig." I'm just like, "Yes, I'll do it." Right? And so
He
we
didn't probably even make $75 at his
no, he didn't.
shows.
He had the investor, but he got a weekly residency at the Coconut Teaser.
I saw you play, man. I was
And
going to say
so,
the teaser is where I probably met
well,
Mike.
and Lynn Fagan at the Coconut
Oh,
Teaser, loved
yeah.
it, man. And so he said, "I'm going to book you guys every Tuesday." And I'm like, okay. So, the teaser is around the corner of Sunset and Crescent Heights. I'd park my Mitsubishi pickup truck and put the hazards on because the steps going up to the gate to load in at the top of the steps was right on the corner of on Sunset Boulevard, and just praying no one's going to hit me, and unloading my keyboards, get them up the steps. And they would have like five bands a night play, and you play your 45-minute set up. As soon as you're done, get the hell off stage, next band up, right? And and you're paying for your own parking. So it's more,
Spent a lot of time at the Coconut Teaser, man.
yeah, man, that
They
was
had
crazy.
the best kept secrets, ASCAP best kept secrets there every
Right.
Thursday. Then when I went to A&M after that, I used to go there for that every week. So I was an A&R consultant. And did you know a girl named Sherry Sloan?
That sounds so
I'm pretty
familiar.
sure I met Michael through Sherry. I think she told me to go check him out. She worked for Rip magazine, but she was also a singer-songwriter. And I remember both of them being in my office in Burbank a few times together. And I think they knew each other. But see what a small world the music business is. Because I don't think Michael ever really he didn't go
No.
very far, did he?
No, and here's how all the worlds collide, Michael ended up getting representation through this guy that he knew that was working with Gold Mountain Entertainment
Yeah.
management. And so he managed Michael, and because of that, he got him connected with a producer named Charlie Midnight.
Oh,
And Charlie
yeah.
Midnight, songwriter, producer, legend,
Yeah.
wrote "Living in America," produced Joe Cocker, the Doobie Brothers. He produced an EP with Michael, and because of that, I got to know Charlie. Well, a few years later, I just stayed in touch with Charlie, and I said, "Hey, man, I kind of want to do my own thing, and I would love to write the opportunity to write with you." So he knew me, he knew I could sing, and so we still write today. I mean, we've probably written 300 songs
Yeah,
together.
he's a legend.
And so my album that is out, that came out end of last year, um, I think all but one or two songs I wrote with Charlie. And I always look, I've been through it so many times where I was going to get a record deal, I had a record deal, and this happened, that didn't happen. And it's amazing how anybody, with all the things that can be lined up, and it's still you don't have the timing, right?
That's what it really is all about.
It
You're
is
right.
perseverance. And you said, I mean, talking about perseverance, um, a couple things. I was really blessed that I had parents who gave me the encouragement, which is massive. And I had and their support. And I had the support of my wife, Kim. I don't know if I was by myself if I would have been able to really stick it out, certainly not in LA.
It's tough.
It is hard, man, because at least you had two incomes. She's working all the time and working all day and then going to acting classes and auditions, and I'm waiting tables and selling stun guns and doing currying and then playing band gigs at night. And it's like, hey, you got to be young and full of energy and ambition and naivete, to not even know that, hey, the chances of you making it are probably very slim. But I believed in myself, and I had enough encouragement, not just from my parents, but from people, mentors like Charlie Midnight. And so I had a band that ended up getting I got a publishing deal with Warner Chappell, Judy Stakey.
Yeah,
Um,
that's another
and,
well-known
um,
name. Yep.
and we were supposed to be the next big thing, and that didn't happen. After a couple of years, I just saw the writing on the wall with
What was the
that.
name of that band?
It's called Me and Buck.
Wow. I almost think that if I go on my treasure chest of demos, I might
Yeah,
have
you
one of
might
those.
find it. Well, it was still not there yet, I mean, I think if it was one of those bands that everybody was really good and we were all good friends, but the parts didn't equal the sum. Jamie Houston, who's my best friend, is my best friend still today. He was in the band. He was the prominent songwriter at the time, and still is, and became a great producer. Did all the Disney stuff, High School Musical, and Hannah Montana, all that stuff. Um, he we had these songs, and I think if we had kept going a little longer, maybe we'd have found our way. We were kind of like, you know, I mean, we were probably in the wrong town for what the kind of music we were doing. Maybe a little more like, Collective Soul, or I don't know. So, we'd been better in the South,
More
you know.
like the Southern rock thing, kind of.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
like Black Crows and all those
Well,
kind
not
of
even,
bands.
and or what's the band I'm thinking of? Uh, More jangly rock and roll, which you think in California would work, but at the time, grunge was kind of the thing, and we were a little fish out of water there. But anyway, we were still good friends to this day. The guitar player Don Kirkpatrick ended up, after that band quit, he started playing with Rod Stewart, and he's still with Rod. And the drummer retired from Cirque du Soleil as a drummer. And so everybody did moved on to great things. And but
Including you.
well, including me. I mean, again, I make connections, and it's all about relationships in this business, as you know. And you meet people, even though this didn't work out, you met somebody else through that ends up forming this other relationship that it leads to something else. And so you're just navigating it all, and like, okay, where will I be after this? So about this point, we're getting into the late 90s, and that's when, because of Warner Chappell, they would say, hey, this is artist, Chris Still, Stephen Still's son, needs a keyboard player who sings. He's on Atlantic Records. So like, yeah, I loved it. I heard the songs, like, yeah, this would be great. A lot of harmonies. So I did that for a bit. And through that, I met a lot of great people, a lot of great musicians.
Yeah.
And, his dad would come and jam with us. That was pretty cool.
That is very cool.
And, I'm trying to think, what's his name? Ethan Johns was the guitar player who produced a lot of big stuff. His which was it, Glenn Johns?
Andy Johns?
Huh?
Andy Johns or Glenn Johns' kid?
I can't remember which was his son, his dad. Yeah.
They
And
were both good.
yeah, exactly. And I think Mark Ford played some with us. So anyway, and then about a year later, I get, hey, there's another son of Tal Bachman, Randy Bachman's son. He's on
Ooh.
Columbia. He's a huge priority. I'm like, yes, I'll do that. And so the phone was ringing a lot through these relationships. I turned down quite a few gigs that, like, I got a call like, hey, Shania Twain, this new artist, Mutt Lange produced her. She's country. Mutt Lange produced her. That sounds weird. Okay, well, they need a guy who plays B3 and sings. That's you. I'm like, okay. I passed on it because I was like, well, I just signed this deal to be in this band with Tal Bachman, and Bob Rock's going to produce the record in Maui, and it's a big priority on Columbia, and I think he's got some hits. And they're like, well, you're crazy, man. I'm like, I don't know. We'll see. And so we made that record with Tal, and produced a number one, She's So High. Actually, I think it went to number two,
Yeah, I
but
remember that.
top 40
Yeah.
number twos. But I still hear the song all the time in, Walgreens or someplace, on
You you
TV.
got you got to meet Steven Stills. Did you meet Randy Bachman?
I did not. That's crazy. At some reason that never worked out, but because, it was Tal was different then. At the time he was a devout Mormon, and he was married, and he already had like five kids. And
Wow.
his dad wasn't a Mormon anymore. And originally he wasn't, but he married a woman who was Mormon and they had Tal. So that's how that all worked out. But Tal isn't Mormon now. He's not in that religion. And now he and his dad are playing together, which is nice to see. Um,
I'm,
because look, I love all Randy's music and
I'm a huge
that was,
fan of the Guess Who. I mean,
oh my God.
Laughing's one of my all-time favorite songs.
Yeah.
I mean, he wrote that one too, I believe.
Yeah. No, he was prominent songwriter and Tal was a son of a baker. He did the same thing. He was a great songwriter. I think at the time Tal maybe wasn't the performer as an artist that he maybe is now. And I think there was a lot of pressure to deliver in that regard. As far as a songwriter and as a musician, he was top notch as a singer too. So we made this record with Bob Rock and boy, what a time to be in Maui to make an album. And the bass player on that album was this guy we found. He was freshly into town named Chris Wise. And they're like, this guy's a great bass player, man. He's so talented. And like, hey, and I'm like, man, Chris, we're gonna do a lot together. Well, it wasn't until um, 20 years later that we worked together again in the Hollywood Vampires. And it was like, oh man, full circle, right? So I'm sorry.
This is what I mean about perseverance. You did so many things to get to where you got. What else led up to the Carlos Santana thing? Because, this we're talking about a song, Just Feel Better, that you wrote that is like, I've just listened to your version and Carlos's version, and 39 million views on YouTube. That's quite a bit.
Yeah.
Was there something before that that led up to that point?
Um, well, playing with these other artists and always still writing songs, the publishing deal, which I met other writers and I always felt like I always used the cliche, if I'm the strongest one in the room, I'm in the wrong room because I want to be around people who would
Surround yourself with talent. Yeah.
kick my butt, who are better than me, and learn from that. You want to play tennis with someone who's better to get better, right? So the same
Hmm.
with songwriting. And so I always was dedicated to that. And there's just no shortcuts to that. I mean, certainly there are people who are just gifted with ability. It just comes out of them and to write songs immediately. But most of us, it's all in it. It's in all of us. I believe that, but you have to be disciplined to learn the craft. It's like you got to learn the rules to know how to break them, right? So, um, and that can take years. So I wasn't fully formed as a songwriter until, it took me maybe 10 years of slugging away and writing lots of songs and some of them good, most of them not. And then finally getting to a point to where you kind of turn a corner like, oh, okay, this is fun. This is it's not still not easy at times. It's like, yeah, you get that lightning bolt of inspiration, that aha moment, which is still the greatest moment in music. Because then you're like, I still got it. This is great. This is so good. There's no greater feeling than that. It beats anything else. And then you got to write that second verse lyric. You're like, oh God, and it's got to be good, and it's work. And then you got to put the work in. And so anyway, I'm trying to get so back on track here. So leading to Carlos. So writing with Jamie Houston, I learned a lot from him and Charlie Midnight, of course. And then at one point, Jamie, who had already started to have success as a producer, said, "Well, hey man, I'll produce you. How about that?" And so we started writing some songs together, and one of the songs, and it looked like I was going to get a deal with Sony, and then in the last minute, a regime change, and it all went away. But one of the songs was "Just Feel Better," and there was a song. It was an idea that I'd started. I was playing with John Waite. This was
Love
2000.
John Waite.
Oh my God, what a mess. So I've been like I've worked with a lot of great singers. I got to sing with a lot of great singers, and that's always been the thing for me. I'm like, again, uh, some of the gigs that I took on is like, if someone else is singing the lead vocal, they got to kick my ass. You know, if I'm gonna sing with them, I want to sing. I grew up singing with great singers. People ask who your influence is. My family, they're all great singers and musicians, and they just never did. They sing on church or get together. Like we get together at Christmas, and we have a big Johnson family reunion on a Saturday night before Christmas, and everyone the guitars are pulling out and lots of food
That
and
sounds like a blast.
it is a blast, and everyone's got to show off, and they're a bunch of hams, and I love it, and we have a bunch of laughs, and by the way, and we all think we're not all on the same page politically or anything like, but it doesn't matter, because what brings us together is our family tightness, bonding, stories, food, and music.
That was a timely thing to say right now. We're not all on the same
I think
page
so. Hey,
politically.
listen, I think music can still save the world,
I
you know.
agree.
And so we got to keep it going. We got to not just think about what's going to, make the dollar. I think if the industry, if it, music has changed the world in the past, a movement, to help end wars and things like that, and bring attention to the needs of people and to be a comfort to people. And so I still have that passion within me to, you know, at the end of the day, you just want to sit in a room and write a great song, and you don't know what sometimes where it's going to come, It's like I have a freaking on my notes on my phone, I've got pages of titles and ideas, and sometimes I'm like, oh, wait a minute, I got something. Let me look for it, All right, got it. All right, and maybe that title isn't the right one, but an augmentation of that or something. But anyway, um, I'm sorry, I digressed there for a minute. We were talking about, uh,
Whatever led you to Carlos
oh,
Santana.
yes, right. Sorry. So I'm playing with John Waite, all right?
Yeah.
And so we're on tour, and Damon Johnson, who's from Alabama, from Birmingham, came out in the clubs of Birmingham around the same time I did. And Damon ended up having a band out of Birmingham, Alabama, called Brother Kane.
Yeah.
And Brother Kane had some number one rock hits in the 90s. And it was produced and co-written with Marty Fredrickson, who John Kalodner, who was A&Ring for Aerosmith, loved this first Brother Kane single called Got No Shame off the first album. Like, well, who's the guy working with these guys? And oh, it's Marty Fredrickson. I got to get him with Joe Perry. And so Marty started working with Joe and Steven. Of course, Marty wrote a lot of songs with those guys and co-produced some albums and wrote Jaded with Steven.
Yeah.
And so years later, I'll come back. But years later, when Steven said, hey, we need a guy who can sing with me and play keys. And, because I've known Marty for years, that's the relationship, right? And so, I always tell people, like, hey, man, you got to make friends. It has more to do who you are off stage than what you do on stage.
Very true. Very
So,
true.
because Marty had confidence to know that I would come in and be a pro and know what to do, and handle myself, and so I appreciated Marty for that always. But so Damon and I we're touring with John Waite, and we had a night off. I think it was in Milwaukee, and it was towards the end of the tour, and we're like, hey man, we've been talking about writing together. Let's do it, And instead of going out, we stayed in the hotel room and we knocked around some ideas, and one of them was the seed idea for Just Feel Better. Well, it was already getting late. And we said, like, let's get this, put what we got down. We'll come back to it later. Well, the tour ended. He's off to Birmingham. I'm back in LA. And this is before we had social media or FaceTime or anything like that. And a month rolls by, and I'm working with Jamie. He's producing me, and we need songs, And I'm like, hey, man, I think I got one. But I started with Damon, let me call him and see if he's cool with you and I finishing it, because I don't think he's coming to LA anytime soon. And course, Damon was like, "Yeah, man, go for it," right? And so Jamie and I finished the song, and we demoed it, and then my thing didn't happen. But then a couple of years rolled by, and Jamie, because of his success, had a relationship with Clive Davis, and by chance, Clive wants looking for the next Carlos collaboration album, and he wants more of a rock track because he thinks something might be with Steven Tyler since he signed Aerosmith and he signed Carlos Santana, two Hall of Famers, and I fell out of my chair when he told me it's going to be a song on the Carlos Santana album, and not only that, but a single. Like I never saw that coming, right? And
And
but then
not only that, Steven Tyler.
I know. I mean, that's just like, oh my God, Um, and it's a special song, The song it's song that really um is about a friend who ended up taking their own life because of abuse, and struggles from early childhood, and she would do anything to just feel better. So it has a heavy meaning to it, and but there's hope at the end. I always like to keep a glimmer of hope. But so I don't know if it was a God thing or what do you want to call it, but I do think that sometimes songs can find their way. You never know where they'll land. I mean, that's the heartbreak too in this business. Like some of your best songs never get heard. And you're like, man, you know, it's all these different things have to line up. And it's amazing. It's like working with guys like Johnny Depp, and he was telling me, he says, it's a miracle that a movie ever gets made. There's just so many things that have to line up, and I think that's true with songs. So to get one is special. And so I always love that song for that regard. And like you said, I was encouraged to put out my own version, which I never did until last year. So that you can check out Just Feel Better, all the
Both,
platforms.
I love both versions.
Thank you
Uh,
very much.
there's so much to talk about. I'm just going to have to fast forward a little
Sorry,
bit
man.
here.
I ramble. I'm sorry.
No, no, your story is I just love your story. John Bionelli, he's been on the show and people know John. He told me that the first show you played with Aerosmith was in Bulgaria with no rehearsal. Is that correct?
That is correct. I was brought in to Istanbul where the tour actually started, and I'll try to do the cliff notes here. So I'm in Alabama visiting mom for Mother's Day, and her Mother's Day wish for me to go to the church she plays at and sing with her and dad, which I was happy to do. And Marty Fredrickson had given me a heads up hey, you know, they may need a new guy. And I'm like, sure, you kidding me? I'd love to. I mean, that'd be a dream, to come true. But then a couple weeks had passed and I didn't hear anything. I'm like, well, they probably worked out whatever problems they had. And so I'm getting ready to go to church, getting dressed, and then I get a no caller ID phone call, and I'm thinking, it can't be. And I answer, and it's like, is this Bud Johnson? I can't do Steven Tyler very well, and he was
He
calling,
called you himself?
yeah, from Istanbul. And and they're about to leave. We're about to leave to go to church. And I said, Mom, go ahead. I'll catch up. I got to get this call, take this call. She got to start the service, right? And so we talked for a little bit, and we talked about influences, and I said, well, I like piano players who sang, whether it was Ray Charles or you know Elton John, certainly Billy Joel, and I just went through this list of players, and uh, shoot, what was I just thinking? But anyway, and we connected on all those artists that I brought up, and he just kind of felt like, okay, well, let's give this a try. We connected, and so after church service, skip brunch to drive back to Nashville with my wife Kim, and then it was like go time. It's like, okay, now I gotta download every song that I don't have already in my phone,
That's a big catalog.
and 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 focus on the ones I
Yeah.
know that they'll probably play to chart. Just to kind of get an idea, and I could study it all on the plane. I had just had enough time to do all that, pack, take a shower, go to the airport. I didn't sleep, right? Get to the airport, fly to Istanbul, the whole flight, I'm just woodshedding. I'm just like, just trying to internalize it all and using a little phone app, with a piano on the phone, trying to like pick out, okay, all right, this goes to there, making notations, get to Istanbul, um, go to the venue where they're doing pre-production rehearsal before the show, the first show of the tour the next day. So that's when I meet Steven. And of course, you come into that camp, and at that point I hadn't slept in 2 days. I'm just adrenaline, right? And you're meeting, it's 100 people in the crew, and you're just like, hi, nice to meet you, nice to meet you. And then it's like, okay, we go to Steven's dressing room. I grab acoustic guitar, and thankfully I learned to play Crying on acoustic because Marty gave me heads up. He may want to do that one first because it's one of the higher harmony parts. And with Steven, there's no singing falsetto with him. It's full voice.
Yeah.
You can hit it, right? Like he did, like he does. And and Crying has a lot of chords to it. It's not as easy as you would think, especially on guitar, but piano would be easier, but there wasn't a piano in his room. So we played it. We get through the end of the first chorus, and he gets all emotional. He's just like, "Where have you been?" I'm like, waiting for this moment to happen, right? So, we hugged it out, and because I'm all emotional about it all, and it was a beautiful thing. And then I go jam with the band, and we jammed on a few songs. Then we jammed. They want to make sure I can play some acoustic, so we do Jaded, which I play acoustic on. And there's a point in the song, so much information to take in because, we know the songs on the albums, but the live versions, the arrangements on some of them are quite different.
Yeah.
And on Jaded, I didn't catch this one, where the band stops in the show and Stevens held a note high. Da, 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 and he's holding it. And then band comes back in. Bye, bye, baby. Right? And I'm a third above him. I'm higher than him. And we're holding this note, and he's like, he's holding it, and he's looking at me, and he's acting like he's looking at his watch. He knows I can do it, but he's showing me off, right, in front of the band. And I didn't quite catch that this was going to happen. It kind of took me by surprise, and I wish I got a bigger breath, but by God, I'm not going to let go of this note, right? And I'm like, I'm starting to see stars, I'm like, I'm about to pass out. But I held on to it somehow. The band comes back in, and they all immediately turn around and smile at me. And that's when I knew, I think I got this gig.
Wow.
So,
It's a great story.
I come off stage. They're all so nice to me. I come off stage, and I meet my tech for the first time. We call him Haystacks. He's from West Virginia. And he goes, you got so much to learn. I don't know where to begin. And so they give me the key. They bring a keyboard and a laptop for the sounds and some multi-tracks of older shows to learn exactly what the guy before me played and sang. And so I spent a third night in a row staying up all night learning the show, making us, because like some songs, the mapping, there's piano down here, there's strings here, there's a different sound up here, and you got to know where those are. So I had to make notes on my iPad. It's a lot of information to take in. Plus, I got to know when I'm singing. All right, sing this line with Steven, skip that line, sing this line, go underneath him here, go above him here. It's crazy, right? It looks like madness and color coded on my iPad, but I had to have those notes just to kind of like glance and stay on track with it. So I meet Haystacks for breakfast. Third night, I'm not sleeping. I said, hey, man, I can't go to the venue to get my ears set and stuff, which I was supposed to do. I need to sleep for 3 hours or I'm not going to make it. He goes, okay, well, I'll call you and wake you up. Well, I fall deep sleep, of course. And he, like a distant phone ringing, getting closer and closer. I finally, I don't know, he said he must have let it ring for 25 times or 30 times. I finally answer, and he goes, Buck, you got to get up. There's been a mining accident. There's riots in the streets, and we have to get out of here. And I swear to God, I thought I was still dreaming. Like, I'm so out of it, right? And he says it again, and I'm thinking he's punking me. I'm like, well, this is cruel. But then he says it a third time, like, oh, okay. And there was a mining accident in Istanbul.
Wow.
And the 300 men lost their lives. It was horrible.
Wow.
The government didn't want to slow down production, even though they had been asking for inspections about with the mines, if they were safe. And so when they collapsed, the people were pissed, and they took it to the streets. So right outside our hotel was tear gas and rubber bullets, and so we got out of there, but they canceled that show. So the next show was Sofia, Bulgaria, and that was my first show with Aerosmith. And we got through that show pretty unscathed. A few misses, but mostly did okay. And what's so funny is as soon as the show's over, the band they walk off stage into the car to get to the FBO to fly out of there. And the crew, they're like ants just breaking everything down. So the show's done, and I'm by myself, and there's no one saying, "Great job, man, you did it. You got through it. Way to go." None of that, right? Because the band had already just left. There's no time for that. The crew, they're busy doing their thing, and I'm like, I don't know what just happened. So I had some Wi-Fi still at the venue, and I'm like, I called my wife. I'm like, I don't know, man. I don't know what happened because I didn't have a good mix because I didn't get a sound check. I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to be asked back tomorrow or not. And so about an hour later, she calls me back. She says, "Babe, a lot of songs are already up on YouTube." Like, you're kidding me. And like, no, I said, I think you sounded pretty good. I think you sounded good. I'm like, oh, all right, well, good. Well, then at the next show, guys like Tom Hamilton and Brad are coming and says, "Man, we think you're a perfect fit. We're so glad you're here." And it was amazing. It was beautiful, and it was a privilege to get to play with not just a legendary band, but music that touched me, and I get to sing with a legend because singing is my thing. And it's been fulfilling. It's been a dream job of my career. And it's led to many other great things. Of course, now I'm playing with Ringo Starr, and there's a connection through that because the Aerosmith camp, one of the guys in the Aerosmith camp is a tour manager for Ringo. And when Edgar Winter got sick last year, they needed someone last minute, and they recommended me. And so, and Ringo's kept me around, so we'll be out with him in June and September this year. And then I want to get this in. Joe Perry Project will be announcing pretty soon a tour in August. So that's going to be amazing.
Were
I'll just,
you were you with Joe when they did the thing with Gary Sharon?
yeah, yeah,
Oh, I saw you in New Hampshire, and I didn't even realize that the
yeah, yeah,
casino.
yes,
This is like 2 or 3 years ago, I
yes,
think.
yeah. Thank Joe's been so good to me. He had me in three bands that can never conflict. He brought me into the project, and I played on this last solo album of his.
That record's amazing with all the
Yeah.
guests on it.
Well, I was in London. Aerosmith was in London, and we had a few days off. And I was about to go. My wife came out, and I was going into a movie with my wife and Brad Whitford and his girlfriend. And I bought my ticket. And I'm walking in, and I get a phone call from Bionelli. He says, "Hey, Joe's rented out a studio here. He wants to know if you could come in." I said, "Yeah, man, I'd love to. I'm walking in to see a movie right now with my wife. Can you come in a couple hours?" And he goes, "Can you come now?" I'm like, "Okay." So I told him, "Look, guys, I gotta go. I gotta go." And so I go there. Of course, I get there, and he's busy doing his thing. And so he didn't really need me right then. It was another 4 hours before they even got to me.
You could have seen the movie.
I know, whatever. It was worth it though, because the two songs I played on that were we did there, and I just by that point I'd heard the two songs. I'm like, okay, I'm good to go, and I knocked my stuff out pretty quick. It was Fortunate One. I mean, Fortunate One, and with Chris Robinson eventually sang, and the Gary Sharon song on there, Quake, and
I always afraid to say the name because I think I'm going to botch it. Switzerland Manifesto?
that's correct.
Switzerland.
Preacherland is one of the is a canyon road off of Sunset Boulevard, and at the top of the hill is well, that's where Joe was staying,
Oh,
oh, and where he did a lot of recording for the album. So that's why the name. So anyway,
it's deep hardcore fans of Joe Perry love this record. I mean, I love all the Joe
yeah,
Perry project records because of all the different singers. I've Charlie Farron and Mark Bell. I mean, those guys
yeah.
are all great. This record, though, for some reason, the
Please,
fans went nuts over.
Talking about great singers, Robin Zander, I on that one. He wrote with he had a couple songs on there. David Johansen, God rest his
Yeah,
soul. He's on a couple songs on there. Terry Reid, if you don't know who Terry Reid is,
yeah.
I know you do, but fans out there, legend, English rock singer, soulful singer, a couple songs on there. So there's a lot of great performances, and I'm lucky to be a part of it. So Joe brought me into that, and then in 2018, Joe and Johnny and brought me into the Hollywood Vampires, and so
Thank
uh,
you for segueing that for me.
yeah, man. Well, look, thanks to Joe, right? And so it was a privilege to be part of that and still part of that. We did an album. We did that second album, Rise, while we were on the road, and so I'm not sure when we'll tour again because you got to deal with all these different schedules. Alice is always working, and what a great man to work with. He is special, um, and just beautiful soul. Great, great human being, and it was a lot of fun. That band's a lot of fun. But maybe in the future, Johnny's getting a lot of movies now, so we'll see when we can get out on the road. And the project's going to be coming out soon. And in the meantime, man, I'm hustling writing songs. I'm producing artists here in Nashville. Stuff is coming out. You never know which one you might hear about, but busy.
I don't get to ask anyone this question, but I have to ask you because
Yeah.
I could talk about Joe and Alice and everyone, but I want to know what it's like being in a band with Johnny Depp. I always was curious about that. What's it like for you?
Um, Johnny is a great guy. They're all good guys. And he is a good guitar player. He really is. I mean, people question that. It's like, well, he was a musician before
Yeah.
he came to Hollywood in a band that had a record deal. And he played guitar. So music's always been a part of his life. He just kind of fell into the acting thing, and when I say that, because I think his band, the singer of that band died, and he's trying to figure out what to do next. And along the way, he had met Nick Cage, for Nick was a big actor.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, he's from a family of actors and filmmakers, but um, and I guess, it was like, hey, he introduced him to his agent or whatever. And I think one of the first things he auditioned for was Nightmare on Elm Street. And then thus his career began. I think probably every girl in America was like, who's that? And he's a true artist. He knows a lot about music. Start talking about albums, he'll know who produced what, who wrote what, who played what, and he goes deep into it. And so it's very he brings a lot of honoring the music. Like he's not just showing up and trying to bank on something. I think he wants to be surrounded, like all of us, with people who he feels he's not the strongest one in the room with. Otherwise, why do it? And to get better. But he's got this career of he calls it his day job, making movies, and he makes a good amount of money doing it.
Oh
So
yeah.
I know he's been through a lot in the last few years, and there's people with different perspectives on it. All I say is, don't believe everything you read, and just know that I know him as a human being, that he's a good guy, and we had a lot of fun, and hopefully get to do more.
Wow. Okay, just Ringo, and that's going to be it. And I'm going to let you go,
No, no.
Buck, because
Well,
you got a
listen,
great story, man.
Ringo, like I told you, I came in because
Edgar Winter.
yeah, Donnie Whiteman and John Bionelli recommended me to the MD, the musical director for Ringo, and because they needed somebody like we need him today. So when they knew Edgar was sick, Donnie calls me up and he said, "Hey man, we don't know what's going to happen here, but I need someone to just to cover for us. Will you learn the show? I'll pay you to learn the show. And by the end of the week, we'll know." This was like on a Monday. And I'm like, hey man, sure. Hopefully you won't need me, but I'm thank you for the work, and I'm happy to be there for you. So I was busy, man. I was mixing an album and I had some other stuff. I had deadlines. So I didn't really look at it that first day too much. I'm like, I listened to it a little bit. I'm like, okay, I think I know what that is. The piano intro to Rosanna, got to have that. Got to know that. Um, and then like on 2 days later, he calls me. He said, I need you to come tomorrow. I'm like, oh, okay. So I had to pull another all-nighter like I did with Aerosmith, charting and
You got the
listening, taking
reputation now, man.
notes.
You got the
It's my
reputation.
MO to come in and not. All right, so this is a good story. All right, you got to leave you with this one for sure. So I come in the next day, and then we go to the first show. We go to the FBO where private planes take off, right? And we're going to San Jose for the first show. These guys don't know me. I talked to Greg Bissonette on the phone, who's a sweetheart and a great human being, and he gave me such great tips and advice. And I said, look, man, I'm no Edgar Winter. He's a hero of mine. I mean, the White Trash album is one of the great albums. I
Yeah.
uh Dying to Live is such a great song. All that stuff. And so I told him like I'm not that kind of player. I'm a singer who plays. He said, perfect. I said, like, he said, maybe you should listen to the live album from the Greek with Greg Raleigh playing. And I listened to that. I said, yes, that's
Egg
exactly
Raleigh.
what I'm doing. Because I love Greg Raleigh. He's a
Yeah.
fine too. And he's all about the B3, which I love to play. And it's more like, I mean, you got Steve Lukather. I mean, you don't need someone else up there noodling. You need someone in this lower mid area that's padding it. It's the glue. I like to be the glue in the band, right? And so I took that approach, and it just so happens is exactly what they needed, at least it's what I feel like works for now with me. So we're waiting in the lobby. I'm meeting everybody and hanging out. And I don't, look, you got to turn off the fanboy in your head because you're freaking out. This is a Beatle. This is Steve Lukather, Toto.
Was Todd there too?
No, no,
Oh,
it's
no, Todd.
no, it's Steve. He hasn't been in there for a while.
Okay.
For a while, it's been Steve Lukather, Colin Hay from Men at Work, um, Hamish Stewart from the Average White
Yeah.
Band, Greg Bissonette, and Warren Ham, who is multi-talented, utility, plays sax, keys,
He
percussion.
always has a guy like that.
But Warren is in total, and Warren does
Yeah.
all the Bobby Kimball high stuff, which is something I always love to do. But man, Warren just crushes it. And uh, anyway, I meet all these guys, and I'm just like, first thing I do is like turn off fanboy, don't talk music, just let them get to know you as a person, and but I did tell Lukather, I said, hey man, after I talked to him a few minutes, just have to tell you, Toto 4 is I'm still have the vinyl I bought that I waited in line for to go buy at the record store when I was in high school. And I played it over and over. It's a masterpiece, every song on that album. And although I identified with Bobby Kimball's high soulful, he's from Louisiana, grew up singing in the church just like I did. I identified with his high soulful vocals. Over the years, his vocal was the more like passionate, like real, like it holds up for me
Yeah.
even. And he says, "Oh, well, now you're really getting to me." I'm like, "Well, I really mean that. I'm not just saying it. Your guitar playing second to none. All the records you played on. Anyway, so we get on the plane. We're about to ready to take off, and the engines are on. The door's still open. The plane starts rolling, and we go right through the hangar. We pierce the hangar, and even Ringo said, "Well, that's a first." The ground crews pulled the chocks too soon, and that's what caused the plane to roll. So we had to get everything off the plane. Donnie's on it. He's a MacGyver. He could fly the plane himself if he had to. And he's like, he's got another plane coming in an hour, right? So we go back into the waiting room and the lounge and get on the next plane. We're all loaded up, got all the gear and the suitcases and stuff we need to take with us. Transponder won't come online. So we had to get off that plane, get on a third plane.
Wow.
By the time we get and Ringo's like, Ringo doesn't cancel. He's like, hey, Donnie, can we make it? I'm like, yeah, we barely, maybe. So we get to San Jose. By the time we get to the venue, it's a winery up on a mountain and it's cold and it's misty. And it's like, oh, okay. So you got 15 minutes to get on stage. So we get on stage and it's the first time, no sound check, no rehearsal. My first time touching Edgar Renner's rig that he was playing was on the first song of the show. And at that point, you just got to trust your instincts. Like I always say, serve the song. What does the song need? Right. And as a songwriter, that's the approach I take. It's like, you don't need me to play here. A great player knows when to lay out and when not to play. And that's the first thing I find, even though someone may be very proficient, are they a great player? Because then they know how to fill the spots and not just keep playing, overplaying, is the worst thing you could do for the song. So I just take that approach, organ pad, singing when they need me to, and Ringo smiling, Lukather smiling. I'm like, okay, this is working. I'm going to stick to that, and we get through it. And we get back on the plane. I'm the last one getting on, and they all gave me applause. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that just happened. Um, so listen, I luckiest guy on the planet. I'm blessed, really grateful. And like again, this road leading to here, I don't know how I got here. I turned around like I did all that. I mean, I worked with the Doobie Brothers. I've worked with so many artists, over the years, and I managed to always keep working. Was it ever easy? No. Was it working a lot of jobs in between that I didn't want to do, but I had to do so I could pay the rent, so I could keep the lights on and keep moving forward until the next thing came along. That's the thing, it's like I said, it's music called me, and I knew that by the grace of God, I had the support around me to allow me to keep doing it. And that's what keeps me going today. But that's to say, as soon as we're done with this, I'm going to start working, writing another song. You got to keep moving, got to keep moving forward.
Bionelli told me I was going to love you, man. He was 100% right, man.
I love
But
him, and I love you too, man. And we got to talk more about this whole Michael Klein thing. I can't believe
I'm gonna find my demos. I know they got to be around here somewhere. I usually
stay in touch.
save.
Yeah, stay in touch with me, and let's keep the conversation going. I love to hear what you have to say about it.
Thanks a lot, Buck.
Yes,
Appreciate it.
thank you, man. Enjoyed it.
All right.